Hi, this is Randy Randall of No Age and host of the podcast Hyphenate with Randy Randall. I want to welcome our newest sponsor of the show, DistroKid. DistroKid helps musicians get their music on all the major streaming platforms, and artists keep 100% of their royalties. Hyphenate listeners get 30% off at distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate. Again, that's distrokid.com/VIP/HYPHENATE. Go get your music streaming everywhere now. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to Hyphenate with me, Randy Randall. Oh, wait, this is Hyphenate Halftime. I'm also here joined with my good friend, Mr. Aaron Farley. How you doing this morning, Mr. Aaron Farley?
I'm doing good. I've been driving.
Nice. What's going on? Yeah, where are you driving to?
Some weird car
Highway
problems
shenanigans? What happened?
yesterday. Just every single warning light in my car decided to just turn on at the same time.
That's not good.
While I was driving, and then it wouldn't shift.
Oh,
it's just like
whoa.
Really great stuff. And then it would drive okay. So yeah,
well,
I had to take it in. But unfortunately, we live 40 minutes and 4,000 vertical miles from anything.
God.
Close to. Well, I guess I could have taken it to somewhere up here, but then I can't get a rent. There's nowhere to get like a rental car or anything, so I couldn't have a car.
Oh my God.
So I had to take it down to the dealership and get thrown into the fire, I'm sure. all that extra money I was saving it's good. I'm glad it's going to a good cause.
Isn't that the best?
It will be.
It will be. When you just when you think you're good, your car is like, fuck that. You're not doing good at all.
I know. And especially my car only has like 60,000 miles on it.
Oh no, it's still a baby.
And it's like,
is this a truck? What do you got, a Ford truck?
No, it's Subaru.
Subaru. Oh, okay.
I will be making my decision on the future of Subaru ownership after tomorrow.
Okay.
Forever.
I've heard
if this doesn't go well, there is no more Subarus in my life.
I've heard good things. I mean, I've never had anybody. I don't know that. I mean, don't know, Subarus are a little bit more of an oddity in Southern California. I think Northern California, the Pacific Northwest, it is the car of choice.
People love Subarus. I think it's one of those things where they also don't talk about how much they have to get them fixed, because
the first rule of Subaru Club is we don't talk about
Subarus.
Oh no.
You don't talk about them breaking down. I just remember as a kid, my first two cars were Subarus.
Okay.
And because in the Northwest,
like Spokane's number one car.
And you're it's all-wheel drive unit. But back then, did you have to shift to four-wheel? No, I don't think so. It was like all-wheel drive all the time. And man, I had to get those things fixed all the time. But they were older, they were used cars. I did not have money.
Yeah. And you get the salt and the rust and all that other stuff there too. Yeah.
Well, and then the oil would they always would burn oil, which I don't really still know what that means. Like the oil just goes into the engine somewhere and gets burned up, and then you have to just put oil in it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But so then I hadn't had a Subaru in a long time. I've had Hondas and I've had a Toyota. Neither
Toyotas
of which
used to last forever.
Had to get fixed.
Yeah, Toyotas and Hondas are pretty indestructible.
And I've never had I think on my Honda, I had to get like CV boots.
Sure.
Like those were the things that always would go out on those. And then I would.
That's a turning thing, right? That's a thing for help you turn.
Yeah, it's like the little
booties that go
like
over
the little
calipers.
Yeah, I'm going to try to explain it in my best way. When you turn the car.
Thanks for tuning in to Car Talk with Click and Clack the Tapper Brothers. Car Talk.
Hey.
Except
how you doing?
Car Talk for dummies, by dummies.
Yeah.
We don't know anything about
car
cars.
Talk for people who know nothing about cars.
Who get ripped off by dealerships.
Yeah, it's like the little joint.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the CV boot. It's like the little joint where you turn and then the wheels turn back and forth. It's that little thing, and whatever, the boots would rip and then the oil would all come out, or the grease, whatever. But other than that, I never had like real problems with those cars up to like 100 and whatever thousand miles. And then now I'm like 60,000 miles. And then I'm hoping it's not a transmission thing, but if it is, the warranty for drivetrain transmission is only 60,000 miles, and mine is at 67.
Convenient.
So,
I know.
one of those great things. So we'll see. I'm
well-
hoping for the best and expecting the worst.
Good luck. I'll knock on wood for you. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I find
thank you.
whenever I take my car back to the dealership, I always find that my undercoating warranty is it doesn't pass inspection. So I have to go ahead and renew my undercoating warranty for, it's about like, $3,000 every 2 years just to make sure that the paint is maintaining its proper emulsion factor. Like, really? Do I really need this? Oh yeah, you definitely need this one. Yeah, you don't want to go without
100%.
that. Yeah.
New spark plugs for sure.
The air filter system for the tires, because if you get dirty air in your tires, it's going to cause you a big problem. So I make sure the filters on my air tire self-inflation button just don't work at all well anymore.
Have you been siflasting your blaster? Because that looks like it's a problem.
Yeah,
that's definitely the problem.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you'll never find it on the internet because people just don't know about it. But
this is the specialty we have here at this dealership. We're the only ones that know about it.
I always hated going to the dealership.
Of course.
Because I've always had a mechanic that I lived close to. That, if you had an issue,
you gotta have a guy.
Be like,
that's always my favorite things, to have a guy. They're ripping you off just enough.
They're just ripping you off slightly less.
You feel it. You're like, all right, that's a better rip off than the other guy's rip off. I can go with that one.
Yeah,
that'll work for me.
Well, because their rip off, they're just making money off it directly. Like that's going to like their kid's birthday party or whatever.
Yeah.
But
the mom and pop rip off versus the corporate rip off.
When they're ripping you off, that rip off has to pay the 5 people above them too. So then the rip off is paying for the dealership, but then it's also like getting siphoned off by your manager and then their micromanager. And then you get your little crumb at the end for like, oh, I got them to do the spark plugs. So like, here's $7.40. But if you do that enough times in the day, you're making $70 extra a day.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the company's making $7,000 that day off of your.
This is starting out like a nighttime podcast.
Hey, what's going on with
this is guys? Not one of our normal
morning,
light and airy daytime. That being said, I'm officially done with school. So that's good.
Congratulations! That's exciting.
Yeah,
are you on? Is this the summer sabbatical?
Well, no, I'm just done with college, like the college part. Grades and everything come out next week, and then I'm done. But I'm going to stick around.
Do you know if you passed, or do you know?
Yes, even if my last 2 classes, even if my last 3 assignments were all Fs, I would still pass. So yes,
that's good.
I've officially passed.
Congratulations!
I don't believe them to be all Fs. I tried very hard. I did my due diligence.
That's amazing.
But yeah,
good job. Good job. See. So then, can you start applying for full-time teaching positions for fall? Or
I have to. Yeah, I have to apply. I mean, I have one credential, and then I have to apply for my other credential. I can apply for that starting next Wednesday, 15th.
So, but you can get hired while you're in credentialing process. Yeah, yeah. Cool.
Yeah,
that's exciting.
Not too much hiring going on at the end of the year. It's a very weird, but it's a very weird process. I'm used to. I mean, as you know, you freelancing for so many years, you're used to like hearing about things, and then you call the person, and there's kind of usually some kind of specific answers that happen, and there's not like who kind of runs the whatever bureaucracy it is with whatever company you're shooting for or working with or whatever.
There's usually a contact person. There's somebody you could contact. Yeah, we'll talk to this guy. He'll know.
And this has been a bit of a wake up call of like, no, just be patient, and there's a system, and there's a way things happen, and just wait, and
the bat signal go up. Our teachers
keep looking up. And potentially, I mean, everybody, like so many people have their story of being hired or whatever, and they're like, oh no, I didn't. I was going to take another job, and then they called me the night before, and they're like, hey, you want to start? It's tomorrow. Yeah, you start tomorrow. They're like, okay, so I should just be waiting for maybe anything to happen. Like, yeah,
sounds right.
That's what you should be doing. Just wait for potential somethings. So that's where I'm at. I'm waiting for potential things to happen.
That's good, but you can still stay on the sub list until that time too, or no?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that So
yeah.
that's fun.
I'm still subbing. I'm helping with the filming and stuff for graduation for the high school and doing some other stuff. So
Oh, so you're in the mix. I
trying to
mean,
be
that's the good thing
trying to
too
be
about
useful.
a smaller district. It sounds like versus when I was doing the
Yeah.
LAUSD shuffle. It sounds like there's a way you're known. You're a known
Yeah.
resource in the community. So as the thing, it sounds like they'll figure that out. It's not
Yeah,
like
and
you're
there's a lot of things to do too.
lost in the
Yeah.
shuffle. That's awesome.
And it turns out people like, we live in a weird little town, and a lot of people who work up here are not from here. Like they drive up, or
I see what you're
and
saying.
so it can be inconvenient for some people. And then if they get a better, if they get something that's closer to their house and they don't have to drive 4,000 feet up a mountain every
Every
morning
day.
for work, a lot of people take it.
Or
So
the
there's a
scarier
little
part,
bit of turnover.
driving down the mountain after the full day of working with kids to have to go down the
Yes.
mountain. That's probably even worse than
Yeah.
coming
And
up in the morning.
especially when people do that a couple times when it's snowing, and it gets really, like, we get really crazy fog that just sweeps in at like 50 miles an hour and shoots through the shoots through town.
That doesn't sound right. 50 miles an hour fog. That feels
I mean,
like,
kind of, because it's shooting up the hill. I'm
wow.
exaggerating
Yeah,
a little bit, maybe 25 miles an hour.
I just got
But
knocked off my feet by this fog. This fog.
but it shoots up the mountain right there,
Wow.
and then at the top it kind of levels off, so you get this. I mean, I'll send you a video. It was like that this morning, that like
Wild.
going over the highway, you're like driving under a bridge of fog, because the fog shoots up the side and it just shoots over the road and keeps going. And so you'll just drive in this really clear spot and it's just fog all above you.
Gnarly.
It's crazy.
You're like fog
Some
surfing.
people, yeah, totally. And some people, it just gets to be a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah.
A lot of miles, you have to take your car to the dealership.
Yeah, exactly. Back to Subaru town.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, well, I'm glad everything's working out okay. Yeah, knock on wood. I've been keeping my little car going, as long as I can.
Yeah,
that's all you can do.
You haven't got that same car since I've known you, I think, right?
Yeah. I bought it in 2013. It was a lease return with 30,000 miles on it, 3 years old. So it's a 2010. So what am I getting into? 2014, or so I'm 14 years old on that car now.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Hey, thank you. That's the best. Yeah, this is the most LA conversation, right? You could have like, oh wow,
your car's
still running. Your car, you have a car that runs.
Yeah,
it's insane. Well, Mr. Taj Johnson. Speaking of Los Angeles, I mean, what could be more LA than Taj Johnson? I feel like he has such a great story, and I've known him over the years. He was a friend of my wife's. My wife, she
my wife.
when Shan first started coming to Los Angeles, she was going to school in Santa Barbara, and then would drive down because I think she had friends or friends of friends, and then she kind of fell in with this like kind of funny former child actor crew that like hung out at the kibitz room at Cantor's in like the early aughts. It was just a lot of like DJs and like, oh yeah, this is Jodie Sweetin, like whatever from Full House, like her boyfriend's the DJ, or her boyfriend does the door. And then Taj, was Frank from Parker Lewis Can't Lose. Did you ever? I mean, among many other credits. I mean, he's done a lot. It took everything I could while doing the interview not to just be like, can we just talk about Parker Lewis? Like, what's Corin Nemec like? What was this like? I was a huge fan. I was the perfect demographic for that show when it came out. I remember just loving that show.
Yeah, I was a little old, but that was my brother's demographic, or like my brother was the years of watching that. And it made me think of those, like that was that moment. And so when was that? That would have been like early 90s?
Maybe 89, 90, 91. So like Simpsons. It was
probably
like
later than 89. It
was akin to the same thing, like the Tracy Ullman show, Married with Children. It was like,
but it was when TV got weird.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if like what brought that about? Was it The Simpsons? Like, did The Simpsons break that mold?
Well, I think it was Fox,
because it was like Tracy Ullman.
Right. Well, I think Fox,
or the Tracy Ullman show existed.
Yeah. Before Simpsons. But I think just the idea of there was 3 networks for things from the existence from the beginning of TV, and then now you have this 4th one, and I think they were just doing anything they could to get attention. So I think they just kind of turned it up a notch and just got weird shit.
Married with Children and
Herman's Head. Do you remember
all
that one?
that. I don't remember Herman's Head. I know you guys brought that up, and I was like, Herman's Head.
Oh,
What is
Herman's Head was
Herman's Head?
awesome. It was like
What was it?
it was like Inside Out, like the Pixar movie Inside Out, where you have
Oh, okay.
actors like sitting around a control station commenting on what's going on in this guy's life. So you'd have a sitcom. It was kind of a meta sitcom. So it's just like, hey, I'm Herman. I'm a guy. This is my girlfriend. I go to work. And then they cut into the inside, like, yeah, right. Take that, boss. Like, sit on it. Oh no, you should be nice. She's really nice. He's really nice. You know, you have the emotions or whatever, the kind of the interior
Yeah.
thoughts going, but portrayed by a
Wow.
cast of character actors.
I'm kind of remembering this now. It sounds. I've got
Yeah,
to go back and see that because that's. But it is weird. Because all of those shows were kind of meta.
you're
Like
right.
even like the joke was about the joke a lot of
Right.
the time.
It
Like the
is.
joke was like, no, 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 this family is so messed up that it's actually really endearing. And then the jokes are actually about the families, but they're also it's this way to like
It was that
say
'90s irony
like
kind of
screw
thing.
the man.
Yeah,
Yeah, but and it was like we're gonna like flip off the man, but really like whatever.
but Rupert Murdoch runs it. Yeah, but
But we're
we
not
are
gonna
the
do
man.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
Did
think
Rupert Murdoch own it at that point?
I think so.
Did he just start Fox? I don't know.
This is a good question. I
Because he's
definitely I
Australian,
don't know.
so then that's like a very Australian humor way to look at things.
I could
Of like
I could imagine
I'm gonna like be smart and witty and and like
kind of
and
a
have all of those
kind of an arrogant
ideas,
ass
but
too.
really like
Yeah,
can we just hang out? I mean, honestly, it's more fun to just make fun of stuff than it is to like
actually do anything. Well, I think it was
yeah, actually, like,
yeah.
or just like realizing like, well, you can't do anything about it anyway. So let's just like be as funny as possible about the whole thing, and then just move along.
It's kind of taking the piss.
Yeah, taking the piss.
Well, I think it was between Cheers and reality TV. You know, there was
Oh
this
right,
world of
cheers.
like, you know what I mean? There were this kind of traditional like the Cosby Show and then, you
Mm-hmm.
know, the Kardashians. There was this sort of like a
Right.
10-20 year period that it sort of evolved. And I think Fox as a network was part of that. So, but yeah, I mean, it was kind of like, but Parker Lewis was like Looney Tunes. It was a version of like a kid's
Yeah.
show with using cartoon sort of logic. And it
Yeah.
just slotted
Right.
right into my little like, you know, 10-year-old, 11-year-old brain. I loved it. That was
Well,
so funny.
and what was the other show with Bryan Cranston with the
Malcolm in the
kids
Middle.
with the
That was like,
Malcolm in the
yeah,
Middle,
yeah.
and those were at the same time.
No,
Like
Malcolm in
we
the Middle was after.
no.
Malcolm in the Middle is probably about like
Oh,
10
way
years
after. Oh,
after.
really?
I think so. Yeah.
Ah,
Or
like
this,
early 2000s
I
or
think
late
so.
90s.
Yeah, somewhere in
Oh,
there.
I always thought of those as being at the same time. Okay.
A little
Because
bit
that
after.
show
Yeah.
too, we got into during the pandemic with our kids. Like, I feel like that just came on Netflix or something. Like, watch these, and we started watching them with the kids, and they all still held up.
Oh, how
They
funny.
were so it was so funny. Just the comedy was funny, and the weird like the parents were so good. Like it's so horrible and so great, and the writing was so great. And I think we watched I mean, it was like 6 seasons, or
Oh, how funny.
I don't know. We watched them all with the kids,
Oh, that's cool. I
but
have to
late,
show that
like
to the kids.
30 years later.
It still
Yeah,
works.
it's pretty funny.
Yeah, but I remember
Pretty funny.
all of like the cast, like Kubiak. You know, he went on to become like went on to like ER. He's like the big guy, the big like football player guy. I think
Oh, right.
it
Yeah.
played off of all those like John
Hmm.
Hughes sort of characters too, like that, you know, the
Yeah.
Breakfast Club kind of things, and like these sort of overdrawn, sort of flat characters from '80s teen movies sort of got, you know, like cartoonized into this thing. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That's interesting that you refer to it as a cartoon because now that I think about it, it would be it is kind of like you had like the kind of zany sound effects and the wide angle lens shots and like everything was kind of bigger than life and really colorful
yeah, like you'd
and
step into the locker and the
just
locker
not
is like a
real.
big room or something, you know what I mean? It was all those kind of
Yeah.
tropes, but like there was no real physical, like physics to it. It was like wasn't real world.
Yeah.
It was more cartoon physics.
Yeah.
And
That's really
yeah.
funny. I
Yeah.
love that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It
I
was so
loved
much
your
fun.
guys's. Well, I was going to bring up too that he said that when he talked about you guys playing at No Age playing at the Dave's Warehouse
Oh yeah.
on 6th Street,
Yep.
and I was trying to think of if that. How often did you guys play there? Often or like just a couple
I
times?
think we maybe only played 2 or 3 times.
because I have photos of you from there the one time with Dean
Okay.
holding like the big
Oh yes.
exercise ball up above his head.
Yep. And then Dean's aunt made a painting of that photo.
Of that
Yeah,
photo,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, and that was the one I also had, like, all the kids were sitting up on the top
The
of the
ramp.
half pipe,
Yeah.
the top of the ramp, and, and so that was funny. I was like, "Oh, yeah, I think I was at that show that he's
Oh,
talking about,"
yeah, that probably was that
right?
show. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And then also then you said, "Oh, that's where I met Shannon," and I was like like, it was Erebus Nixon Sticks opening for Big
Yep.
Business, and
Do
I
you,
think we played that show.
you're kidding. Do you have
Yeah, because
photos from that night?
we opened no,
Oh, because
but
you were
we
playing.
opened for
Yeah.
Big Business. We opened for Big Business at the 6th Street Warehouse,
Yeah.
and I feel like
Oh, that's
they
hilarious.
I mean, we either opened and they played after us or one of the 2,
Yeah.
and I think there were 3 bands there,
That must
and so I was like,
Shannon's
"Oh
band
my
must have
god,
been
I think
the first
we."
band on.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we could have
Or you could
very
have been
easily
first
been
and
the
then her.
first
Yeah,
band
I
on,
don't remember.
and then they were after us. Either way, but I mean, we played with them a bunch of times.
Oh, how funny. But
So,
only once at that
but
warehouse.
we only played once at Dave's spot. Maybe we might have played a couple times, but we only played with Big Business one time, and
Wow.
it was at
Okay, so
it was at Sixth
that
Street.
must have been it. So I guess
Yeah.
for listeners, this warehouse was down in downtown LA when before downtown LA had kind of become nicer. It was still like in pretty sketch times.
Yeah.
The smell was down there early on, like '99, which was really sketchy. And then this is probably fast forward like 2005 is when I
Yeah.
met Shannon. So it's still like not much nicer, but it's like this warehouse was even in a sketchier part of town, like right off of Alameda, and like real just like Skid Row into then like shipping warehouses and just
Yeah.
trucks
Like
coming and
right
going.
across. Yeah, right across the street from a huge shipping area.
Yeah,
And
and
then they had a full size half pipe in there.
yeah,
Yeah.
and Shepherd
That
Ferry
had
would
been
make would have like a silk screen kind of shop there too. I think he had like I always got the sense that it was like
Oh, he
Shepherd
did for a while,
was
right?
paying the rent on it, but Dave like kind of ran it. I could have that
Right.
wrong.
I forgot Shepard was working or had a spot there. Because Shepard used to do everything out of his garage. And then I think he was down there for a while.
Okay.
And then he got a spot in Frogtown after that.
Oh, okay. Oh,
But
right. That was that Studio
but yeah,
One
there was
place.
and there were all those people that lived upstairs. There was like a loft upstairs,
Oh, I never made
super
it up there.
sketchy. And it was
I never
just
went up there.
like, it was just like a couple little rooms and there were just mattresses on the floor. And someone would be like, yeah, I'm renting a room here. And I'm like, oh,
Are
geez,
you?
this must be rough.
Yeah, there's shows every night. You have to like
Yeah,
put up with like
shows every night, and if there's not shows every night, there's people skating there like constantly, and
yeah. So, but I remember you. So
yeah,
the
we
bands would play on the flat of the half pipe,
of the half pipe.
and
Yeah,
then the bathroom was back, so you had to like walk through the half pipe to go to
you
the
had
bathroom,
to
and then
walk through the band.
through the band
Yeah,
playing on stage through the band to go to the
yeah.
bathroom, and then behind that there was just like rubble, like right before it, like train tracks. There was like train tracks and
Oh,
just like
right.
rubble. There was kind of the smoking area / additional bathroom. Like if the
Yeah, I was
if
gonna say
the
if there was a line for the bathroom, that was
you just
bathroom
go
number
piss
2.
on like the broken concrete rubble that people were kneeling on to smoke cigarettes while the trains
Oh my
would go
god,
by or something.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have some good photos from that place. I have like that band.
I like how
Our friends.
we give the worst description. You're like, yeah, I have great photos.
It was awesome.
Please,
I mean, the
yeah,
place was great because well, there was the guy outside. Do you remember his name that Dave would give him money? It's like a homeless guy,
Smokey.
and he would give him
I don't
money. What's
know.
that?
Smokey. Is
It,
it that guy?
it might have been. Yeah, it was a name like that, and
Yeah.
you'd give him a couple bucks, and then uh, you'd tell him what your car
he
looked.
wouldn't break into your car. You give him money so
Well,
that
no,
he
that's
wouldn't
what I'm
break into
saying.
it. Yeah.
No, you'd give him a couple bucks, and you tell him where your car was parked, and he would make sure that your car did not get broken into.
Is that nice of him?
Oh my god. And
That's
so
always my
you
favorite
always had a
scam.
couple bucks,
Yeah.
give him, and it was true. If you ever gave him money, no one, and he kind of he ran that block of all the
Amazing.
dudes that lived down there.
Amazing.
And he'd be like, "Don't touch a black car. Don't touch that car over there." And like
Hey,
they never would. But then every once in a while, if you didn't pay him,
so
mysteriously your
what a
window would get
coincidence.
broken.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. It was
that place
awesome.
was fun. It was like a lot. I feel like I saw some art shows. Like he would do art shows, and and I'm trying to think. I mean, I saw HR from Bad Brains
Whoa.
play there with, and then the other band had like three of the people from Fishbone. But then again, you're watching these like kind of legends, and then you're like, oh my god, I have to go to the bathroom. Do I really
You got to
have to
walk through the
walk through their
stage.
set to go to the bathroom?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess so.
Yeah. That
But
place,
but yeah,
that was
that
fun.
was
But I
fun.
mean,
Yeah, Big Business. I saw Melvins play there.
oh, wow. That's crazy. But like anywhere in LA,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Those kinds of spots, they don't last forever. There's a short shelf life for
No.
places like that. But I can say, yeah, I met my wife there,
Well, and back
you
then,
know, so it's
okay.
fun.
Yeah. Well, and back then the warehouse space was cheap enough. Like, do you remember Brian's warehouse that was on? It was it was now where there's a big gallery there. I think it's Wild and Crayon Gallery. I think,
Mm.
but it was. I mean, it was like 4,000 square feet, 5,000 square feet. It had like 7 rooms,
Uh,
and I think he was paying like 2,000 a month for it or something. And he was living in one of the rooms. There was a couple other people living down there, and we were like, "How are you making 2,000? How are you finding $2,000 a month? This is crazy." But they had a big stage, and I saw, yeah, just so many bands at all of those places. I mean, I think we played there a couple times, but that band, the Mean Reds, used to play there all the time, and yeah, Sonny K, his band.
Year Future.
What was his band's name? Yes, Year Future would play there, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
no, it's
awesome.
fun. I mean, definitely it was a place in time, Los Angeles, you know, warehouse
Yeah,
spots. Um, but yeah, so cool. But yeah, I love talking Taj. So I've known him then for a bunch of years, and it's always kind of funny, you know, him being a friend and stuff. And I always just thought like, what a wild story. And I know he had told me about his dad's story, you know, kind of being the
yeah,
band leader for Etta James and all the
yeah,
crazy sort of hippie sort of shenanigans, and how great was this story of Mick Jagger, you know, guiding him away from the giant cocaine plate because it wasn't sugar, and then getting him some cookies in a napkin and then putting him on his way somewhere else backstage.
yeah. I mean, it's amazing. Like even when he's just being younger in those situations, and like, well, I'm going on tour with my parents, and that's just normal, like
Yeah, for back
normal
then in
every
the
day.
70s and 80s.
Yeah, but also just coming out of that, I feel like even when he talks about working in the industry and working production and doing all that, that it's interesting when that, because to me, that world is still very crazy, even being in it for 20 years. It still is like, wow, this is still not like, this is weird what we're doing.
Yeah.
But I think growing up in it, you're like, no, no, this is just this is the job that people have in this town.
Yep, time to
Like
go to work.
this is the blue collar, this is like the blue collar work kind of like the well paying, like really hard work, a lot of hours, a lot of stress, and like it just happens to be that a lot of people end up seeing the outcome of what you make, you know.
Yeah.
It's like it's just a different thing. And I think like growing up in that must be interesting, like seeing like when kind of being a working musician or being in the entertainment industry is what your parents do, and that's just a normal, like, yeah, yeah, you know, you either become a musician, or you work on films, or you're in production, or maybe you're a recording engineer, or maybe like that's just normal. That's like being like, well, you know, you sell insurance, or you run a janitorial firm, or you're a HR manager at the hospital. You know, it's like
Yep.
that's other towns, but LA, all of those jobs are like just in production.
Yeah, it's so funny. I remember growing
That's
up,
cool.
I had an uncle who was a carpenter, and one of his good friends was a best boy, which I didn't know what that was. But
Yeah.
um, but I would always see him and his family at like barbecues and whatnot at my uncle's house, and and I remember, you know, telling him like, oh, I was like real little. I mean, probably 7, 8 years old, but I really liked movies and TV, and I wanted, you know, I wanted to do that. And I remember he was working on that show Hunter. I don't know if you remember the
Oh
show from
yeah.
the 80s. And I
Yeah.
remember like
Totally.
I probably was bugging it. I was probably bugging him every time I saw him. I'd probably bug him about like Hollywood stories, and he's just like, there's nothing to tell. But
Yeah.
he did give me a Hunter script,
And I remember just being so blown
It's
away, like,
amazing.
what? This is like the shooting script for like this next season's, one of those shows on Hunter. And I remember just being like so blown away by that. And just like
That's amazing.
going
I
over and
love it.
over it. But yeah, but like the best, I think it's like a grip or something, just guys that are just on set moving stuff,
Yeah,
like hanging
Best Boy
lights.
Grip.
I don't know what
Yeah,
or
I
gaffers.
think
Yeah.
yeah, I think Best Boy Grip is like second in line for grips. I don't know. I
There's
don't
something,
remember.
yeah, but
But yeah.
yeah, I remember thinking that was funny. And then I think so the same thing. I think his son went into it. I think it was, he had a known name, and
Yeah.
he'd been on so many crews, and he would get the call, whenever they were crewing up, and he'd just
Yeah.
go to work.
When it's just like friends that grew up in San Pedro, and they're like, well, if you don't know what you want to do, if you don't want to leave and do something else, you go and sign up and get in on the docks.
Oh well, that's a huge
And
thing because that's a union gig. I feel like there's
but
almost
that's
like a made you're like a made man if you got a dock gig.
no, totally. But that's what the entertainment. I mean,
Yeah.
up until now, like now, there's less union work, but
Oh, and the IATSE and
before
stuff
it,
in
it was
town
just
too, right?
like,
Yeah.
yeah, when you start as a grip at the bottom, you get all your hours in, and you have to get signed off on shows, and you have to go through the whole thing. But then once you become part of the union, you're in. Like you get to, and again, like it's really similar to me because when I grew up, like my first two jobs were in construction, and
Mm-hmm.
so those were just sweeping up and doing whatever. But then one of them was a union job and one wasn't. And then when I got here and started working in production, I'm like, oh, this is just construction. It's just like it's like
It's
the
the
same
same thing.
jokes.
Yeah.
It's the same dudes. It's a lot of people who've went through a lot of rough times in their early lives, and then but they're hard workers, and they realized like, oh, I got to get everything together. I got to get a job, and then they do this, and they're like, oh, this is good. This is nice. These like good lunches. The hours are pretty good. We get union pay,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you're a union electrician for 40 years, and you worked on a bunch of shows, and you have all
Yeah.
the T-shirts to
Made a
prove it.
career, put the
You
kids
have
through
all the
college.
crew shirts.
Yep.
Yeah, totally. And it's great. I mean, I've friends that are union set painters and union, and like when the work's good, it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny
But
how normal that can all seem. But yeah, it
yeah,
seemed like Taj had lots of good stories just kind of being in that world. And but it's
oh
how
yeah,
funny,
his
but I mean,
Woodstock.
oh god, yeah, what was
Oh,
the
sorry.
Woodstock thing? Oh yeah, there was like his both his parents played at Woodstock.
Yeah, his
Yeah.
was like, well, yeah, my mom was in one of the bands. Jimi Hendrix asked her to come up on stage, but she regretted not doing that. I'm like, oh yeah, you think?
Being one of the
I would
cultural
imagine.
defining moments of a
Oh
generation,
my god.
like the last 100
Yeah.
years, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I probably should have done that.
No,
Well,
his
what are you
stories were
gonna do?
great. And I loved how he told them too, because it wasn't like bragging.
Right.
It was like he was just talking, like it was just a nice conversation, and then something would get brought up, would go, wait. What did you say?
Yeah, I know.
I love it.
As we were discussing, I wanted to make sure I was like highlighting all this stuff. Like, okay, wait, this
Yeah.
happened? That happened?
Yeah.
But also, yeah, I mean, I just can't imagine being, that instead of like that college age, when we were all kind of going to college and dicking around, you're on a nationally syndicated TV show. And just all of
Yeah.
the craziness that goes along with all that, and you're getting paid all this
Yeah.
money and all that crazy stuff. And where do you go from there? That's what I
Yeah.
think was so interesting too, as we got into it. It's like, okay, well that happens at that age, but what does that mean? What's the rest of your life
Yeah.
look like? And I feel like that's the kind of the
Yeah.
story, like we know the Todd Bridges, the like Different Strokes, kind of like the sad child actor stories. And then you see some of
Yeah.
the good ones, or whatever, Elijah Wood, or some of the Mickey Mouse Club people. Ryan Gosling, was a
Yeah.
child actor, but there's a lot of, but like everything, there's stuff in the middle. There's stuff that just kind of happens. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, how do you make this all make
Yeah.
sense in life? And I feel like
People just work for a while.
that's another big part of the people you meet in LA. That there's the construction guys that are just
Yeah.
working all the time. And then there's a lot of guys like, well, I was a millionaire when I was 15, and
Yeah.
now I'm in my 40s and I'm not a millionaire. And
Didn't
not
realize
that
you had
Taj
to
was
pay
a millionaire, but
taxes.
yeah, not that Taj was a millionaire, but just what I mean. But that kind of like, it's crazy. You think that's like,
Yeah.
it all adds up to something.
I mean, and I have to imagine that like most people, that's the story.
Right? Yeah. Even
If you're kind of fortunate enough to get to that point where you're on a nationally recognized thing, it's probably only going to go for a short amount of time. Just just by the law of averages.
Right.
And then you're either going to have to like double down to try to get more, or you just kind of do something else. I mean, I think musicians are kind of that way too, right? Like
Yeah.
and photographers, like usually most most photographers that get up to the level of shooting commercial work and stuff, it's a pretty short span because you have to constantly change your, like, you have to keep your own thing, but you also have to change with the times.
Right.
And I think that like there's certain people that do that great, or their style is timeless enough to where it can kind of ebb and flow through all that stuff. But most people, I think, have a couple pretty successful years and then a couple not successful, and then it's whether you can get out of that or not. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, that was fun. That was a good time. I mean, that's what I'm going through. I'm
Right.
like,
Well,
yeah,
me
it's great.
too. You know what I mean? I've
It's great, but
definitely
I
had
couldn't
that,
keep
like,
it. But I couldn't keep it up. I couldn't keep up the hustle, or the hustle didn't. The hustle wasn't as fun anymore. And
yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you know what? Maybe this was just for me for. I mean, it was not a short amount of time. 20 years. It's a pretty good amount of time.
That's a career.
Yeah,
It's not your entire
yeah,
life, but it's a part of it's a
yeah,
significant chunk of your life.
yeah. That's a
Yeah.
couple chapters.
Yeah. Well, I find myself, at some point, with the ebbs and flows of things is like, and it's not just generational, but maybe it is, maybe that's the biggest part of it, but just the, the not caring, you know what I mean? Like the level of bullshit you have to care about or pretend to care about to sort of
Yeah.
maintain some relevancy in something, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I'm sure that's across any industry or any job or anything, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, just those different degrees of that of like, okay, I can kind of fake it, like, sure, yeah, this is great, and then at some point you're like, I actually really don't care, that's, which is
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
I think it's
And,
better to be
and
honest
sometimes
about
it
that.
matters. Sometimes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, for your own good, I think it's definitely better to be honest about it, or to just go, yeah, maybe I don't. I mean, I think uh, when you like, you think of how different. Well, at least I do. I think about how different my life is now than it was like 10 years ago. Even when the kids were little and all that stuff. And I'm like, no, I actually don't like all of those things that were so exciting, like traveling and, oh my God, I'm going to fly to this place and I'm going to stay at a hotel and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And then the last couple times that I had jobs like that, I was just like, oh, I would just want to be home. Not that the job wasn't fun or anything, but that it wasn't like, I was kind of like, I think for me too, that I stopped seeing, I'm like, oh, I think the future for me in this is kind of over how it used to be. It used to be like really romanticizing, like, and then I'm going to do this, and then it's going to, and then some of that stuff happened, some of it didn't. But then eventually I went like, I would love to live in the now. Like I'm always kind of feel like I'm living like, well, that next job, and like 6 months from now when I do a thing, and it's going to be this, and then eventually for me it's like, I think I want like, I would like things to be, I would like to be present, and I would like to do something that is happening right now, and I'm not always worried about like 6 months from now, or 3 months from now, or a year from now. Whereas when I was younger, I loved that. I loved like, oh my God, I'm going to try to do this thing, and in a year I'm going to have a good enough portfolio that I'm going to be
this
able to get this kind of
this thing
work, and
sets up
it was
that thing,
fun.
sets up that thing. Yeah,
Yeah, and it
it's
was
all.
fun and exciting, and having the gallery and doing all these things of like, now we're going to do this, now we're going to do this. And now I'm like, oh, I think I would like to not worry so much
Well,
about
because
what could potentially happen,
that's the other side of.
and instead of having like a controlled uh, a controlled present for a little while.
Because I think it's not just it can't just be Hollywood stuff or LA stuff or New York stuff, but I'm sure there's a big portion of that. Is a lot of the work you do is to set you up for the next work. There's a lot of like
Right,
laying
right.
groundwork for other things, or like this thing's really interesting because this guy's working on it, and that could lead to this, and that could go this way. But there's a lot of ifs in
Yeah,
that statement of why is this thing good. You put up with a lot of bullshit and working weird jobs or doing weird projects because there's a potential payoff or the sense of paying your dues in some way,
Right.
shape or form, or making connections. And again, that's really how it works. That's so much of the
Yeah.
industry, and so much of anything is just who you know. And the only way you get to do those things is by kind of eating shit on some jobs in order to make connections. You know what I mean? Or you lay the groundwork, like, oh, now I know all these people, so now when my turn comes, I have all these connections.
Yeah.
I have this community behind me in some way, or this work experience that I can say.
Yeah.
And you see it. That is not an untrue statement. But however, there is no guarantee that you will have a time that the spotlight will just randomly hit you, or that any of those people will still be there, or that any of those connections are even relevant. And I think you reach a certain point in a career where it's like, I don't want to do the thing that's going to put me in a good position for the next thing. I want this to be the thing that's good for me right now. I just want that.
Yeah.
And it's hard, because I think it's especially
100%.
a lot of music stuff, like literally bands open for other bands. And there's a feeling of like, if I open for this big band, well, do you get paid? Like, not really. You get, a little bit of money, notoriously very little money for opening bands. However, but you're going to play a big stage, and their 5,000 fans could potentially, one of them could become your fan, or hundreds of them. You could get the notoriety, that kind of stuff. Like, literally you work for exposure for in these types of, whatever forward facing, front of camera job type of things, talent jobs.
Yeah.
And again, but you can't really survive being an opening band. So at some point you have to be like, okay, I'm not going to open anymore. Or I'm not going to be the opening band for the rest of my life. I need to be the headlining band. And then so you sort of just cast your dice and go, okay, here we go. Now here I've done all my, or you've like, I'm only going to open for bands of this level now. Now I'm a headlining guy now. I think it's the same with like comedians, stand-ups and stuff. Like, you work your way up from opening to middling to then featured, and then the big thing. And then same thing with bands, we're on tour with the big band. We're the opening band for the big band. But then if your headlining shows don't really deliver, if you're not selling out thousands of tickets on your headlining thing, then the whole house of cards starts to collapse. And then you go, well, then now you don't have the opening gigs anymore, and now you can't get the headlining gig, and then you see the venue sizes shrink smaller and smaller and smaller till you're back to where you started. You're playing for the 100, 200 capacity rooms.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And
that's how that works. And then they ask you, well, hey, do you want to go open? Then, best case, or not best case, but then you'll get offers like, do you want to go open for that band? You mean the band that opened for us, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Now they're the big deal, and we could go get paid $200 where they got paid $200 to open for us. Now they're going to give us $200 to open for them. Like, I don't really feel like doing that. He's like, well, it'd be good exposure. It's like, I've already had the exposure. I've already done the thing.
Yeah.
I ate all the shit there was to eat. I don't think I have any more room for eating shit anymore. But it's fun. But it's fun when you do it when you're young, because again, it's a life experience. It's a career. It's a whole thing, and it's great.
And also you're like creating a community, and you're meeting people. And I mean, I feel like half those times, like going on tour or any of those times, it's also about meeting the crew, and meeting like the booking agents, and meeting the person that runs the venue, and you end up having all these friends later in life that are like not even job related. Like, no, that person's great. Well, I got to travel the world and meet all these like random people from all these towns, and every time I go to the town, I go grab coffee with that person, and because we're friends now, or we're like, you're like building a community. And I don't know. I think that there's like there's no rules. And there's also like nothing makes sense, like why certain people, like why certain things happen, and other things of like your favorite band, you're like, oh, I wish they could get bigger, like why don't more people like them or whatever. Like, I don't know, maybe it was like 1 year too late. Who knows? There's no rules. And why did the guy that made like Green Jello, like that Little Pig song, made like millions and millions of dollars? And you're like, I don't know. It's just like sometimes it's just random.
The right time, the right place. Somebody thought it would be a good idea to give them
or maybe they're like a genius business person, and you just never knew it. I think that a lot of it comes down to, I think, like there's certain people that really have an eye for business, whether they end up becoming creative people or not, and they can like see and like I really do think that there's people that can see the future, whether they look at it that way or not, but they can
Yeah.
like map out, they can plan out, like map out things and stick to it. And that like, I don't know. It's not like making it happen, but kind of like
They
seeing a potential in the future and going,
could
oh,
read
I
the
can see the
trend. Like, this
7
is
steps.
stuff's trending this way. If I position myself in take these 10 steps, I could be in the
Yeah.
right place in the right time for this trend that I see happening if it pays
Yeah.
off. Oh, it's such a gamble.
Uh-huh.
And so much of it is just a gamble.
Totally.
You roll
Yeah.
the dice every time and go, oh, okay, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
And at the same time, you got to do it.
Right,
I
yeah.
mean, I really think like I think that what ends up happening is that the people, like the metric that people go by is how much money you made, or how much success, or whatever, how many people know about you or whatever. But that at the end of the day, that these things are all like, what other kind of job do you get out and meet all these crazy interesting people, and know people. I mean, people from all over the world, because you work with them one day at a time. you
Yeah.
know
Yeah, and
like
if you're not an
yeah,
asshole
for
and you're
3 days I
nice
was
enough guy, yeah.
in Belgium, and I met these 5 people that I'll know for the rest of my life,
Yeah, that's
or
true.
whatever. It's like, that's the only reason I went to our band got to go to Australia for a week, even though we have no fans, we have no record sales. We only played in LA and maybe San Francisco and San Diego a couple times. But like, we met these guys through LA, through me shooting photos, and then that guy was starting a label and put us on a 7-inch, and then we became friends with the guys from the 2 other bands, and they're like, we're doing a tour. If you guys can fly here, we'll put you up for 20 days and we'll go up and down the coast and play a bunch of shows at bars. I'm
It's
like,
amazing.
yeah. How did that happen?
Let's
Just
do it.
because we had this like crummy loud band in LA, and just like completely randomly meeting people who have the same kind of like dumb romantic optimism that you do, to make noise or make art or whatever,
Yeah.
and go like, this seems fun. It's not going to make any money. None of us.
Yeah.
Who's going to make money anyway?
We
Might as well just do it.
It's not even
We're
part
not
of the
making
equation.
money.
We're here. We're at home not making money. We could go make money in Australia. We could go not make money in another country. Perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean I could
Yeah.
lose
Let's
money
go not
other
make
places?
money over there.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Easy. Done.
Right.
You had me at not
but
making
it's
money.
but I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start out. Let's just put this out there. No one's coming home with even $1, but this
Check.
will hopefully pay for itself in some way.
We will all have pictures with koalas, and hopefully not come back with any STDs from the koalas.
I do. Yeah. I have a picture of myself laying in a field of kangaroos as well.
There we go. That's it. That's what you got paid in. You got paid in fields of kangaroos.
Paid in fun, Randy.
That's
paid
it.
In fun.
Paid in fun. Before we sign off, I think it is definitely worth touching on the passing of Steve Albini. My God, man! This was
that was crazy.
Yeah, we're recording this a little bit earlier. It's Monday now, so I'm sure we've all spent the weekend looking at remembrances. But it was just Instagram was just kind of flooded with photos and stories and everything, just out of the blue. It just seems unreal. Dean texted me a snap, like a screen grab. He's like, "This can't be real, right? Is this a joke?" And I Googled it and I was like, "Holy shit! That's not real." But it is real. But it doesn't feel real. It's like it was my brain just couldn't process it.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, especially someone like where seems. I mean, I obviously didn't know him, but it seemed healthy and like of good. Like, I mean, just it's
61.
One of those. Yeah,
out of nowhere.
It's one of those crazy things, and a heart attack, right?
Yeah,
just like out of the blue.
That's what it said. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's been amazing. Listen, I don't know. I feel like those things are. It's like, really, that guy. The one guy out of all the people, like, you're just like, no, Steve Albini. He had like basically he's maybe one of the most important people to usher in whatever like kind of punk rock underground music to the mainstream, and still keep all of his credibility intact, and the person that I feel like people still go to his old, like, still quote his old things about the major labels and and like how much money they take from people and the percentages and like, I mean, he's so amazing to listen to his uh just his words and theories and ideas about all of this shit, and to be
Yeah.
so honest. And everybody, I've never heard a bad story about him. For all the bands that worked with him, and I mean, just like working and like being a part of that, like everybody I think wanted to record with him.
Well, I think it's an interesting one because he was so known and so well
Yeah.
respected that I think the only stuff I would hear, or I think people's expectations were sometimes not met,
Oh,
and maybe
really?
that had nothing to do with him. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think there's an ability for fans or for a culture to have such high expectations of
Right.
somebody, and I think he literally was a working engineer, and he would
Yeah.
do the job of being an engineer. He didn't necessarily have star making abilities, and I don't think he sold himself as that.
Yeah.
If anything, just the opposite, right? But
Yeah.
however, but like we said, it's all about
Yeah.
the the level of living in unreality that a young
Yeah.
creative person has to do in order to
Right.
tie themselves into pretzels to do all these things, and
Yeah.
and the amount of people I'm sure with stars in their eyes that were bigger than their talent that would arrive on Steve Albini's doorstep with whatever thousands of dollars or a parent's credit card or whatever
Yeah.
version of payment they had to offer him. You know, I think he knew what he was doing,
Yeah.
and he would do the job. But I think a lot of
Yeah.
people wanted something more from him, if I could say that. I
Yeah.
think if that's a fair characteristic.
Like waiting for his input, and he
Sure.
was like, no, I'm setting mics up to
Yeah.
make your
Or
equipment
opinions about
sound the
how
best.
do I sound like the Pixies in Nirvana and Jesus Lizard,
Right.
and he's like, you don't. I'm reading a magazine. Why are you asking me these questions? My job is to put the
That's
microphone in
interesting.
front of your amp. Like, well, but I want to sound like these things. He's like, well, but you don't sound like those things.
Yeah.
You sound like you. I can make you sound like I made them sound like
Yeah.
them, and I'll make you sound
Yeah.
like you.
You sound
That
like
was
you.
his job, and I
Yeah.
think that's how he approached it in a very pragmatic kind of way. Because at the end of the day, that's it, right? I mean, he wasn't selling
Yeah.
smoke up your ass. He wasn't selling you a dream. He was just selling a
Right.
service of putting microphones up. And I think
Yeah.
he had to develop that work ethic for that reason.
Yeah.
That's all he could do. When I think if we were all to be honest, time and place again, he probably had a lot of strong opinions about music and bands and engineering and sounds, and
Yeah.
applied those to a lot of those early recordings of his own bands and those projects, and really had a creative color to those things. And I think he learned over the years that you can't replicate that, but you can replicate
He didn't want
good
to
recording.
be
You can't. Yeah, but yeah.
like, maybe he didn't want to put himself in the position to where people have expectations of him being this star maker. Like, you're gonna make me into the Pixies, right?
Right.
And him going like, yeah, it's not what I'm.
Well, but it's not, and good on him, because
Yeah.
he was the product he sold was not. He didn't make Nirvana.
No.
He made that record, but again, they wrote
Yeah.
the songs, they had the voice, they played this, they performed the songs, and he brought an ear of quality production to that thing. But
Right.
if he were to say like, yeah, come over here, I'll charge you $100,000 and you can record with the Nirvana guy, then he would just be
Yeah.
making the same record over and over again and just working, and I think it's a nightmare. That's a hell. That's, for only reserved for special kind of people who could put up with that kind of thing. Of just,
Yeah. It's not a longevity. It's not like the longevity of good art,
right. Yeah.
which is like holding to your values and saying, like, here's how if you want to record how I have set this space up, then great.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to change to make you happy.
Yep. And more people won't listen to your band because you recorded it here.
Yeah.
No,
Totally.
you won't be better looking. Your friends won't like you better.
Yeah.
You won't do anything. All you will have is a recording that was made here, and
Yeah,
do with that
right.
what you will. That's up to you. And
Yeah.
and again, that's all any of those other bands were doing at the time too. It's not like he had such a name, especially back then, that was a sellable aspect. But like
Yeah.
anything, it's a weird kind of business.
Well, and I feel like I heard an old interview with him, I mean, a while back, and they were just talking about Chicago at the moment when he started recording, and he was just, naming bands and naming bands in the area and being like, oh yeah, you were like you're in the middle of it. Like there was just so much happening at those times, and I forget that even like Smashing Pumpkins was from Chicago, right? And
Oh
like
God, yeah.
so there were even massive, huge bands coming out at that point, or
Well, and all the
after
industrial
him,
wax track stuff,
and
Ministry. There was all,
yeah,
Chicago's always been,
totally,
yeah, huge.
yeah. So you forget about all of that stuff too. I do feel like Chicago kind of gets they're kind of like under the radar when people talk about, it's everyone's like New York and L.A. and
Seattle.
I mean, maybe even Atlanta,
Yeah.
Seattle, like all these things, and then like, yeah, just don't mention Chicago.
Keep
Just
it under your hat.
just let it just
Oh,
be
my God.
Chicago. Like everybody will find out later how
I've-
great it is.
yeah.
Like how these amazing bands from Chicago.
But I think I don't know. I think it's that kind of thing too. I don't know, is there something in the air, something in the water, something,
Yeah.
something in every bar that's on every corner. I think there's
Right.
almost enough to have one bar per person, per population in Chicago, in downtown.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
Well, and
yeah.
he was the perfect guy at the perfect time with the perfect knowledge to be able to like build a recording setup for that sound, and then Shellac and Big Black and all, it's just like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Some people just figure it out.
Yeah. I think he'll definitely have a lasting impact, and it'll be interesting to
Oh my
see
God.
sort of what, as people, as the legend only grows from there.
Yeah. And I used to, when I played poker for a while, I used to listen to him talk
Oh,
about his
okay.
poker strategies and stuff. And he was like way into poker, like amazingly like strategic and funny. And yeah, it's pretty
How
good.
funny. I never got into poker. I
Yeah.
remember we played at a Ultramars Parties festival up in upstate New York, and he had a poker room there. And like, it was
Oh,
like, it was
okay.
like a freestanding poker game, and people could go in. But that just literally felt like, you're just gonna go lose money to Steve Albini to say you played poker with him? Like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
this is becoming a little bit too much. Like,
It's like the VIP section where you just pay $200 and you get like a shirt and a signed thing, and you get to say hi
it's
for
like,
10 minutes.
yeah, I lost money to Steve Albini.
Yeah.
I'm not as good of a
That's
poker player as he
what it
is.
says?
Yeah, I think so.
It's signed.
It just felt a little usury in that regard. I understand not taking people's money, to not promising them that you'll make them sound like Nirvana, but sitting
Yeah.
down with kids that don't know what they're doing and just taking their money for poker.
Well, then at
that
least
seemed, that seemed
you're
like a little bit of an unfair advantage, or not understanding the meta social narrative of what's going
Yeah.
on around this
Hey, man.
event. Kids are going to
Everyone
line
needs
up and they're going to all ante in for whatever your $20 a hand, and I would say 99% of them don't know how to play poker, and you're just going to go ahead
Yeah.
and take their money and say, thank you, I recorded Nirvana.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
I recorded Nirvana. Thank you. No, I'm sure that's not what he did at all. But it felt, there was a certain, I remember walking through the room at the time and kind of being like, well, what the fuck am I going to do here? I don't know anything about poker.
Yeah.
I don't have
Yeah,
$20
you're like,
to lose to Steve Albini. I'll just say hi,
Yeah.
and then leave it at that. It's
Yeah.
like, hi.
I'm no dummy. I'm no dummy. I'm out of here.
Well, I am a dummy, but I'm not that kind of. I knew better than to.
I'm
going to
go waste my money somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a guitar pedal over here that sounds different than another guitar
Right.
pedal.
The guy said it's broken, but I'm sure I can fix it.
Yeah.
It was only like $150.
But it was made.
It's super rare.
It was made in the cool factory, not like those other factories. This is the factory that sounded good. In the 1 year and the 1 month that something else sounded good.
This is that. You remember when that guy Rick worked there? This is when he was doing the soldering.
He knew how to do those pedals. He could
Trust
solder a chip better than anybody else. That's the one I want to get. I've heard.
Yeah,
I read about it on a blog or on a message board.
Yeah, I'll show you. Let me get my spectrometer out. I'm going to show you. You see where that peak is right there?
Rick's
None of
chips.
these have this peak.
Yeah, man.
This is perfect. Rick's chips. Amazing.
Oh, awesome. All right. Well, I will see you on the next one. We'll see you down the road. Good luck with the car. I hope it the Subaru keeps on subing down the road.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Me too. Me too.
All right. See ya.